Despite all the concerns by Leanne and other Flint residents, no one was listening. So she says she did the one thing she could and turned to science to prove that something was wrong.
And that meant turning to environmental engineer Dr. Marc Edwards, who confirmed their fears that the water was tainted. Tonight, Dr. Edwards reveals not only the lessons learned over the past decade, but also why he believes Flint was just the beginning of a broader issue. Water. It's one of our state's most precious resources.
Flint lives matter! Flint lives matter!
But it was in 2014 when Flint residents,
they don't live in Flint. They don't have to drink this water.
Noticed a change in the tap.
I got a drink and I started drinking it, and I drank about half of that glass and realized that that water looked like this.
And figured out something was wrong.
It's truly an American tragedy.
Dr. Marc Edwards, an environmental engineer from Virginia Tech, was called upon a decade ago to help unlock the mystery swirling around Flint's water.
It was desperation that was completely understandable. The water tasted and smelled like crap.
Fresh off of exposing a similar lead water crisis in Washington, D.C., when Dr. Edwards arrived to the city of nearly 100,000, he met families afraid of cooking with or bathing in the tainted water that came from their taps. He once again discovered another American city with high lead levels in its water supply.
I funded that citywide sampling campaign out of my own pocket because I realized that we had to get this exposed and get people protected as soon as possible.
It's been a decade, and while so much has happened to the city, its residents, and its children, Dr. Edwards believes the effects of the lead-tainted water could have been much worse, even though the crisis led to tragic outcomes, including deaths caused by Legionnaire's disease.
And I think the data has now shown that the harm wasn't as bad as people first feared, and it looks like, thankfully, we did get people protected by switching back to Detroit water and getting bottled water and filters. And so to that extent, I think it's a little bit of a success story, and that it could have been a lot worse, although it doesn't change the tragedy or the criminality of what occurred. But the harm that was considered to occur from lead in water has been exaggerated, and there are possible negative repercussions of that.
In 2023, Dr. Edwards, along with other higher ed scholars, penned an opinion piece in a science and social digital magazine called Undark. They say, according to research, most of the harm was done to Flint's children, not due to the water, but from the words that followed the crisis, called the nocebo effect.
Nocebo is if you tell people that they were harmed more than they really were, ultimately they'll start to manifest some of that. And so it's quite dangerous and disconcerting. And we're trying to think, how can we correct the messaging so further harm doesn't occur to Flint children from the wrong messaging as well.
What do you say to those critics out there who are saying, hey, people died because of the lead in the water? There were rashes that people got. My child is in special education classes all because of the water. So what do you mean that this nocebo effect happened? Here's proof right there.
Well, we did expose the Legionnaire's disease outbreak that did kill at least 10 Flint residents. The harm that was done from the lead is unacceptable, but at the same time, providing a false message and telling kids they're brain damaged from lead in water when that simply did not occur, that has negative repercussions as well. And so, the good news is that messaging helped raise a lot of money to help kids in Flint. But the fear is, will that money, the good that comes from it, be outdone by the harm from the wrong messaging? So it's something we have to strive to get right. And I don't think we're there.
But what has gone right so far, he says, is that the lead lines have been replaced and the Flint water is testing at safer levels.
In Flint right now, from everything I've been able to see and all the independent analyses that have been done, are no worse than other cities. And in fact, you're way ahead of the curve in reducing lead and water risk. But at the same time, if because what happened, people will never drink the water again or even bathe in it, that's a tragedy. and it's certainly understandable.
Water is life! Water is life! Water is life!
And even though over the past 10 years the world watched as Flint battled an unimaginable lead crisis, Dr. Edwards says it's only a matter of time before the same crisis boils over in other communities across the country.
Are there other Flint, Michigan stories that will eventually emerge in our lifetime?
I'm afraid so.
What is your message to the people of Flint?
That what happened never should have happened, and there's been tragedy on top of tragedy. And I think we will be arguing about and trying to learn from what happened in Flint for several decades to come.